But he says, see, the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman. Now watch this. They always were trying to trip him up. Listen, he wasn't only knew the law, he created the law. The law was to bring men to the knowledge of sin. Prior to the law in the Old Testament, men didn't know that adultery was a sin. They didn't know that stealing was a sin. They didn't know that lying was a sin. They didn't know that covetry was a sin. They didn't know that backbiting was a sin. They didn't know any of these things that the Ten Commandments talked about. See, so God brought the Ten Commandments, and he brought those 10 laws, amen? And so then now man sees these laws, and he realized the knowledge of sin. Amen?
Amen.
Sin was brought into him by the law. Now, the Ten Commandments are just the start of the law. I think there's like 190 laws throughout the Bible. And this particular one was one of them. And this particular law was a death sentence. Let's know what it was. But here comes the scribes and the Pharisees. They're bringing a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now, let me stop there just a moment. Let me show you something. She was caught in the very act. Now watch. This was Mary Magdalene, by all accounts. She was a temple prostitute. In other words, she was having relations within the temple with men. Now, how would these men have known that? Unless they had been with her themselves, correct? Well, under the Old Testament law, if you're caught in the act of adultery where you be man or woman, you were to be stoned to death. I'm glad that law ain't in effect today. What you think?
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Be a lot of dead Americans. There wouldn't be nobody left in Hollywood, I don't believe. But see, this was a law that would stone you. They were to be put to death. And see, the scribe was the writer of the law, so he knew that. The Pharisees were separate ones, and they knew that. And but they're the ones, see, it's the one that says, I'm not doing it, that they're doing it. Amen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. You're a liar.
Yeah.
You sure? Let me tell you, to catch her in the act, you had to be there. You had to be partaker of it. It's just like somebody robbing a bank. You got a driver, you got one guy going in to rob the bank. Does the driver make him innocent? No, because he's guilty by association. So if you're sitting there watching her, you're guilty by association. So hear what they said. They said, oh, we caught her in the very act of adultery, master. And now they want to call him master. Okay? They're trying to play on his authority, so to speak. Now watch what happens here. He says, now Moses, watch how they could quote the law. Now Moses in the law, trying to trip him up. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what saith thou? See, now they called him master, which gave him authority and power. Now they tried to snatch it right away and said, now what do you say? Putting Moses over him. He didn't only quote the law, he knew the law. He made the law. I love Jesus. See, now us, we fire off. We don't think about what we say. The Bible said be slow to speak, slow to wrath, slow to speak. Think about what you're going to say. Slow to speak. See, not us. Somebody says something to us, boom, we're on them. That mouth goes to run before we can catch it. Amen. Somebody will say something, and we're right back just that quick. And Christians do that.
Yep.
So what we have to do is slow to speak, slow to wrath, because the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. So if we want to be Christians, if somebody says something, well, you know it's a lie, you know it's not true, you know what God's doing, you don't fire back. I preached a message 4 years ago in this church. I'll never forget that message, and I'll tell you why. I preached that message. Don't react to how somebody acts. Amen? Because people are going to do things that are going to set you off immediately, like a bottle rocket. Amen? Just your fuse is that long, and they'll light, bang, you're off. You're off to the races. And you'll be saying stuff and doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing. I'll give you a great example. You drive a car. All of you about here drive a car. Some of the young ones can't hardly wait to drive a car. When you get behind the car, listen, parents, tell the young ones, when you get behind the car, I catch that phone in your hand. And it will be the last time you drive that car, and that rump will be sore. Amen? Mm-hmm. Me and Daniel was coming out of Lexington the other day. Here's a great example. The light turns green. I'm behind the lady. She's playing with her dog and looking down at her phone too, going like this. You can see her. She's going. And the light turns green. We sat there. So I finally came a little toot toot on my horn. She looks back in her mirror, starts flipping me the bird. Now, truthfully, there's my witness. I didn't say a word, but let me tell you what he said to me. He said, "Now, Daddy, let it go." I said, "Daddy, let it go," because he saw the steam coming out my ears. Amen. But you got to realize, I drive a truck every day on the road, a big truck. And I deal with that all day long, and it just wears on you over a week's period of time. Now it's Friday, and I'm off, and you're going to flip me the bird. So my first initial wasn't say, "Lord, they just bless that lady. Bless her that she'll stop that car so I can go beside her and pull out the car." Now I say that and you laugh, but let me tell you why you're laughing. Because you feel the same identical way. But see, we let our mouth take off. They asked Jesus. Now Moses said in the law, and he commanded us, she should be stoned. What do you say? Well, that's what Jesus said. This they said, tempting him or testing him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger he wrote in the ground as though he heard them not. Now watch this. They didn't care that she was an adulterer. You know why? Because they were having adultery with her on a regular basis. But they wanted to use her. You don't think people won't use you to get to somebody else? Oh, yes, they will. Mm-hmm. They were after him. They could care less about her. See, if you read this story and you don't look into it, you think they care about, hey, we care about the law. We're religious people, and we want something done. No, they wanted to trap him because they knew he said he was the Son of God.
Amen.
So he began to stoop down and write on the ground as though he heard them not. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think. It doesn't say what he began to write in the sand. It does say, this is my thought. This ain't Bible. This is Pastor Ron's thought. I believe that he began to write their sins down. Let me show you why I think that. This is my thought. It's not Bible. My thought. I want you to get that straight. He says, so when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and he said unto them, now, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. Uh-oh. Wait a minute, we weren't expecting that. See, they are never expecting. People are never expecting. They want you to react how they act. They're never expecting you to do the opposite. You take them by surprise. Amen. And see, when you're living for Jesus and you do the right thing, people can't handle that because they expect you to act just like they act. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And you have to, by God's grace, and it does take God's grace not to act like the world. Amen.
Amen.
Because God's grace will keep you. Look at the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. They get up there, they could care less what America have. They're fighting among each other like children. And it don't make any sense. You see what I'm saying? People act and react. When we as Christians say, hey, I want to be like Jesus. And I want to act like Jesus. And what a great place would be if we all did that. Amen. So he said, ye without sin. So I say it like this. I remember one day I preached this message and I brought a bag of stones with me. I said, now if there's anybody in the church, there's a bag of stones. If there's somebody you want to throw a stone at, go ahead and come on and get one. Nobody, it's the funniest thing, nobody come and got one. I threw one hit Daniel in the head. I said, well, that slipped.
That went his dinner for the day.
But I say like this, if anybody in the church or anybody in the Christian community, you think that you have the right to throw a stone, get you one and throw it. Jesus asked them that very question. Ye without sin. Now, to throw a stone, here's the key. You got to be sinless. You got to be on the same level with God and Jesus. You got to be sinless. You got to be forgiving and loving and kind and merciful and long-suffering and gentle and meek, kind, all those things. You got to have all those attributes. And they got to be working all at once in you. And you got to be able to say, I forgive you no matter what. You got to be sinless. You can't have any sin. And that's what he's saying. You without sin cast the first stone. You can't do it. Nobody can. Because we all have had sin. And see, that's what he's trying to tell them. Listen, if you've got sin, you can't cast a stone. You don't have that right.